The financial system gets paid before you do, not metaphorically, literally. Every direct deposit that lands in your account has already been processed through a sequence that was designed, deliberately, systematically, over decades, to extract the maximum amount of your money before you have a chance to make a single decision about it. Taxes leave before you see the number. Automatic subscriptions pull within hours. The rent is due on the 1st. The car note follows. The credit card minimum arrives like a bill collector who never sleeps. And somewhere at the end of all of that, if the math works, if nothing went sideways, if the car didn't need anything, and the kids didn't need anything, and the body didn't need anything, there's a number left over. That's what most people call savings. Whatever's left. That arrangement isn't an accident, and understanding why it exists is the first step toward doing something about it. What they don't tell you about the way most people handle money is that budgeting for what's left is not a financial strategy. It's a design feature. The real reason most people are always behind, always one unexpected expense from crisis, always watching the account drain faster than it fills, isn't income, it's sequence. The order in which money moves determines everything, and right now, the order is working against you. There's a shift. It's not complicated. It doesn't require a higher salary, a side hustle, or a spreadsheet with 37 tabs. It requires one decision, made once, applied every single time a paycheck arrives. Hold that thought, because before the mechanics, there's something worth understanding about why this specific piece of financial knowledge never made it into a classroom. Before we go further, let me explain something. There's a concept called manufactured consent, the idea that the information people receive, the habits they're taught to treat as normal, and the systems they're encouraged to operate inside are not neutral. They serve someone, applied to money. The school system that never taught compound interest also never taught why your bank profits when your savings rate is 0. The culture that celebrates spending as a reward for hard work also sells the debt that makes the next paycheck necessary. The subscription economy is built on one assumption, that most people will forget what they signed up for before they remember to cancel it. This isn't conspiracy, it's architecture. The financial system wasn't designed to make you wealthy, it was designed to keep itself liquid. And it does that by training you to pay everyone else before you pay yourself, and calling that responsibility. The reason this matters here is that the advice coming in the next few minutes isn't motivational, it's structural, it's a counter move, and it only works if you understand what you're countering. Most people have a relationship with their paycheck that follows the same sequence every time. Money arrives, obligations get covered, life happens. What's left, if anything, gets saved, invested, or spent on something that felt necessary enough to justify it. This is called pay yourself last, and it guarantees a specific outcome. The amount you keep for yourself is always determined by the efficiency of your spending, the unpredictability of your life, and the appetite of every institution between you and your own future, which means you are always last in line. The people who actually accumulate wealth, not just high earners, not just people who inherited something, but people who built financial positions out of ordinary incomes, don't operate on the leftover system. They operate on a different sequence entirely. Money arrives. A fixed percentage moves immediately to savings, investments, or a purpose-driven account. What remains is the operating budget. Life happens inside that number. That's it. Pay yourself first. Not as a motivational phrase, as a mechanical instruction. Here's the pushback worth taking seriously. The most common objection to this sounds like, I'd love to save first, but there's nothing left to save. My expenses are already more than my income most months. That objection is real. It deserves a real response, not a dismissal. If your expenses genuinely exceed your income on a consistent basis, a sequencing change alone won't resolve that. What it will do is force a confrontation with the actual gap, which most people avoid by letting the account drain naturally and calling the result just how it is. But for the majority of people who make this objection, the honest math tells a different story. Expenses aren't fixed. They feel fixed because they've been treated as fixed. The subscription that's been running for 11 months on a service nobody uses. The grocery bill that's 30% higher than it needs to be because nothing gets planned. The eating out that happens not from luxury, but from the low-grade exhaustion of a life that never has enough margin to prepare. These aren't moral failures. They're the predictable consequences of a budget that never had a ceiling, because the savings commitment at the front end never created one. When the operating budget is whatever's left, spending expands to fill it. When the operating budget is whatever remains after the savings commitment, it doesn't. That's not discipline. That's a system, and systems produce outcomes that willpower can't. Now, the specific mechanics. Because pay yourself first is a principle. This is the execution. Step 1. Decide the percentage before the paycheck arrives. Not the amount, the percentage. The amount will fluctuate. Life will intervene. If the commitment is a number, it will get renegotiated every time the account looks tight. If the commitment is a percentage, it scales automatically and removes the negotiation entirely. Start where the math allows. If that's 3%, it's 3%. The goal in the first 30 days isn't to save an impressive amount. The goal is to prove to yourself that the sequence works, that life continued, that nothing critical broke, that the operating budget adjusted to the constraint. At 60 days, increase the percentage by 1 point. At 90 days, increase it again. This is called incremental automation of wealth building, and it produces something that feels almost implausible until you've experienced it. The account growing without a single moment of sacrifice, that registered as sacrifice. Step 2. The money must move before the operating account sees it. This is the mechanical edge, not a transfer you intend to make. An automatic transfer that executes on payday, before the balance registers as available, before the spending decisions begin. Most banks allow a scheduled transfer to a separate account at the moment of direct deposit. That account should not be attached to a debit card. It should not be the account you check when you want to know what you can spend. It should be structurally inconvenient to access. Out of sight is not naive. Out of sight is intentional friction applied to the most important financial habit you own. The brain doesn't miss money it never saw. That's not a productivity trick. That's neuroscience. The pain of financial loss is significantly more powerful than the pleasure of equivalent gain. When money is visible and then moved, there's a felt cost. When money moves before it registers as available, there's no felt cost. Same outcome, completely different psychological experience. Pay before you see it, and you never feel the loss. Step 3. Name every account. This sounds minor. It isn't. An account labeled savings is an abstraction. An account labeled car replacement, 18 months, is a commitment. An account labeled first investment, property, is an identity statement. The research on this is consistent. Named accounts with specific purposes have lower withdrawal rates, higher contribution consistency, and longer retention across income disruptions than unnamed accounts of equivalent size. You are not saving money. You are building something specific. Name the thing. The name changes the behavior. You're still watching, which means you already know something is off about the way you've been handling this. Here's what that means. It means you've probably done the math at some point, looked at what's come in over the last 12 months, and then looked at what's actually in the account. And the gap between those two numbers didn't make sense. Not because you were irresponsible, because the sequence was wrong. Because every institution you interact with financially was paid before you were. And the system called that normal. The people who understand this, and who act on it, don't look different from the outside. Same income ranges, same life expenses, same unexpected costs. The difference is entirely in the sequence, and the sequence produces compounding outcomes over time that look, from the outside, like luck or advantage, but are actually just math applied consistently in the right order. This channel doesn't offer the comfortable version of financial advice. What gets covered here is the version that requires you to understand what the system is designed to do, and then build something that runs counter to it. If that's the kind of content you're looking for, the subscribe button is there. At the 40% mark of every video on this channel, there's usually a comment from someone who watched this far and is about to type, This is great advice, but it doesn't work if you're living paycheck to paycheck. That comment is worth taking seriously and worth taking apart. Living paycheck to paycheck is a condition. Pay yourself first is a response to that condition, not a denial of it. The research, including a 2021 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research tracking low to middle income households over 7 years, shows that automated savings commitments at even 2 and 3% of income, maintained consistently, produce measurable net worth divergence from non-saving peers within 18 months. Not because 2% is transformational, because the habit creates the infrastructure for increasing the percentage over time, while simultaneously reducing the psychological friction of doing so. The paycheck to paycheck cycle doesn't end with a raise. It ends with a different sequence. The raise just makes the sequence more powerful. Save this video, not because it's going to disappear, because in 3 months, when something unexpected hits the account, and the instinct is to pause the automated transfer just for one cycle, you'll want to come back to this specific section and remember what one paused cycle actually costs. It costs the habit, not the money. One pause becomes a resumption that never quite happens. The automated transfer gets restarted 2 months later at a lower percentage, with a built-in psychological permission to pause it again next time something comes up. The contribution amount is recoverable. The behavioral pattern, once interrupted, takes longer than most people expect to rebuild. The net worth gap between people who automate savings and people who don't isn't primarily about the savings. It's about what forced budgeting does to spending behavior on the back end. When the operating budget has a hard ceiling, when there's nothing more coming because it already moved, spending patterns shift without effort. Subscription audits happen naturally because the account is tighter. Meal planning increases because eating out has a visible cost against a visible constraint. Small purchase decisions get made differently because the brain recalibrates what affordable means against an actual number, rather than a vague sense of what's available. The savings account grows, but so does financial intelligence, because a constrained budget is a feedback machine. Every decision produces an immediate, visible consequence. And that feedback loop, applied over months, builds the kind of financial judgment that no book or course can replicate. You weren't just building a savings account, you were training yourself to think like someone who has one. Send this to the person in your life who checks their account balance before every transaction but still doesn't know where the money went at the end of the month. That's not a discipline problem. That's a sequencing problem. And this video is the fastest explanation of the fix that exists. There's a deeper question underneath all of this that one video can't fully answer. Why do people who understand this, who have heard the pay yourself first principle, who know the math, who've seen what compounding does over time, still not do it? That's not a financial question. That's a behavioral one. And the mechanism behind it is worth its own dedicated video. Because what's operating underneath financial avoidance is something that shows up in every area of life where the cost is deferred and the benefit is distant. That video is next. The uncomfortable parallel to close on. Every paycheck you've ever received was also received by someone who earned less than you did and kept more of it. Not because they were more disciplined, not because their expenses were lower, because the first instruction their money received on arrival was different from yours. The financial distance between where most people are and where they want to be isn't measured in income. It's measured in the number of pay periods they spent last in line. The line starts forming the moment the deposit clears. The only question left is where you're standing in it. Drop your number in the comments, the percentage you're starting with. Not what you think you should say, the real number. 0 is a legitimate answer, so is 1. The comment section on this video is going to be the most honest financial conversation most people have had all year.